Our Leaders Summit theme is the year of ambition. So in the next 90 minutes, how do we actually get to that position? How do we get to that place? Coming up, you will meet Paul Polman. He's the Vice Chair of the UN Global Compact Board and also Co-Chair of Imagine. What Paul is going to do is unpack some findings, the current findings from the UN Global Compact Annual Implementation Survey and Joint CEO Study with Accenture Strategy. So it's going to be a great collaboration, interesting findings to share with you. I'm going to hand over to Paul. You'll be in good hands. Hello, Paul.
Well, hello, everybody. As the Vice Chair of the UN Global Compact, it's an honor to be here. The UN Global Compact is an amazing organization. In fact, if it wouldn't exist today, someone will invent it. In its 21 years, it has grown to one of the biggest sustainability movements in the world. And frankly, not a day too soon. Business has a clear responsibility, and the Global Compact captures that in its 10 principles on human rights, labor, environment, and anti-corruption. It also is action-focused. With their global network of over 13,000 companies, it is actively focused on implementing the UN Sustainable Development Goals that were approved by 193 countries in 2015. We also are lucky to have Sanda as CEO. She certainly understands the development agenda better than anyone else and works tirelessly every day to deliver on this promise. We're coming together at a crucial time. The COVID crisis is not only a health crisis, but also an economic crisis like no other. We've seen the global economy go down by well over 4%. We've seen $28 trillion being wiped off of the GDP of this world, $16 trillion spent on saving lives and livelihoods. Yes, this economy is undergoing a fundamental change. It's the scale of the Industrial Revolution, but the speed of the technological revolution. Interestingly, because the signs of a failing system were already obvious before the pandemic, we failed to address them during the financial crisis. Hopefully this time we won't. The two most burning issues to me are climate change and inequality. Our current economic model is certainly not sustainable, and increasingly we're also discovering it's not inclusive enough. On climate, the high levels of overconsumption have led to playing with our planetary boundaries. In fact, only 9% of all the materials we use in this world is reused. World Overshoot Day, the day that we use up all the resources that this world can replenish, was last year, August 22nd. In other words, after that day, we're actually stealing from future generations. We've seen a 68% decline in the average mammals in the world, fish, birds, reptiles, amphibians. Some people call it the sixth greatest extinction. Half the world's rainforests have disappeared, and we're still on a trajectory of 2.5 degrees or more as far as global warming is concerned. On inequality, we're not scoring much better either. We're leaving too many people behind still. 4.3 billion people still living on less than $5 a day. 1.6 billion vulnerable workers. 150 million more pushed into absolute poverty as a result of COVID. And the sad statistic is that most of the people in this world have seen their combined earnings go down by $3.7 trillion during COVID. Yet the billionaires of this world have increased their fortunes by 3.9 trillion, enough to give everybody vaccinations, not let anybody go to bed hungry anymore, and provide education for the 240 million children that are still excluded. 2020, fortunately, was a wake-up call for most of us, the corporates, the investors, and governments alike. I believe that most governments and political leaders now understand that the transformation that is needed to build back better is absolutely crucial, that we cannot miss this opportunity. The pandemic gives us a once-in-a-generation chance to redesign together, to build on common values, shared interest, and inclusive prosperity. And frankly, you as members of the UN Global Compact agree. 70% of the companies in the Global Compact say that the pandemic has increased the importance of corporate responsibility for their companies. 45% of the CEOs say that they have adopted more ambitious sustainability targets as a result of the pandemic. And yes, even on the S side, we're moving forward. The tragic death of George Floyd has brought the racial dimension higher onto the agenda, and we see the same with the gender dimension. In fact, 60% of the companies in the UN Global Compact are now targeting to have 30 or more women at representation at board level. And that's good to see. You're also embracing the SDGs, and not surprisingly, it's probably the biggest and best business plan that we have in the world. An opportunity to unlock between now and 2030, $12 trillion for the global economy and creating 380 million jobs. Who wants to miss that opportunity? And the alternative of going back to where we came from is simply not attractive. In fact, the cost of inaction now, given the 16 trillion that we've spent on COVID alone, is becoming significantly higher than the cost of action. And that is probably true on all of the Sustainable Development Goals. We need to ensure now that people and planet are at the heart of our recovery. And that requires business leadership. Governments alone cannot do this. The business community has the most important role to play. It accounts for 60% of the global GDP, 80% of the capital flow, 90% of the job creation, providing people know-how, technology, and funding. It is the business community that can drive change by committing to bold climate actions, by using nature-based solutions to protect natural capital, by accelerating the food systems transition, by improving the energy efficiencies and the use of renewables. And yes, by eliminating deforestation from all of our supply chains. As ever, the UN Global Compact is putting a stake in the ground. And this is a crucial year of delivery and what we call the decade of action for the Sustainable Development Goals. More than 80% of the Global Compact members are actually actively working on the SDGs and trying to drive impact on decent work and economic growth, climate action, health and well-being, gender equality, responsible value chains, all key focus areas for the Global Compact. And according to the latest research done together with Accenture, 73% of the CEOs see now a huge opportunity to act on these SDGs. I've certainly found that the case when I was running Unilever, and these CEOs are right. The leadership is provided by the One Global Compact team. Never ever have we been so united behind a refreshed and more focused strategy that should serve all of these 13,000 businesses across the world. Of course, it is focused first and foremost on the UN Global Compact 10 principles. It's an opportunity to demonstrate more ambitious contributions to the SDGs and inspire more business leaders to join our journey. But we're also looking at growing representation. We need to extend the existing 69 local networks of the Global Compact and reach more companies in the Global South and the East, to be honest. It's the movement of 13,000 that needs to go to 20,000 plus. And yes, we have to measure impact. In addition to human rights, labor and environmental and anti-corruption, the UN Global Compact will lead and shape gender balance, decent work and economic development, climate action, peace and justice, and partnership. We also need to harness the power of the SMEs. They are the force of our economy. And the US Global Compact will establish the cross-cutting digital programs for SMEs to leverage the information and tools that they need to create responsible value chains. And finally, we will strengthen our coordination with the overall UN organization, not surprisingly. Better coordination with all the UN agencies, resident coordinators, and UN country teams will be needed to connect the local, national, and international activities that we're having to drive to higher levels of corporate sustainability and responsible business practices. So this sharpened strategy, worked out with many people over the last few months, is absolutely vital. And we know even now, so more importantly, as we are faced with an uneven recovery, we certainly have more work to do. The uneven recovery is also seen by the responses from the people from the different parts of the world. In fact, over more than 50% of the CEOs from Africa and more than 40% from Asia are saying that the pandemic has had a negative impact to them on sustainability efforts, in comparison to only 22% of the CEOs in Europe and 19% in North America. And the CEOs of the Global South are also saying that COVID has negatively impacted their capital allocations towards sustainable investment, towards community programs, or towards digital skill development. So we have our jobs cut out, and if these statistics are true, it should certainly be a concern for all of us. As we know, there are critical achievements to be had to achieve the 2030 development agenda. The financing development initiatives and infrastructures need to be strengthened. We need to strengthen the support to the most vulnerable communities. And ultimately, we need to ensure that no one is left behind, including as a result of the digital revolution. Although I'm a prisoner of hope, quoting one of the things that Desmond Tutu once said on a panel I was in, we should feel a little bit optimistic of where we are. Not least because of the UN Global Compact work and the commitment shown by everybody to carve this better future. Ultimately, we know what we need to do. We've never been so forewarned about things that are going to happen, yet also so forearmed with tools to do something about it. An abundance of technology and money, and a lot of positive enablers coming out of the pandemic. In the pandemic, we've shown that science matters, that we, after all, can work together at the global community level, that we can react fast when we're faced with a crisis. Let's use these collective efforts now that the stars are aligned to move forward to the implementation of the Sustainable Development Goals. Contrary to what people thought before the crisis in 2020, we saw a turning point that left many of us optimistic about the future of the planet. An acceleration of ESG, environmental, social, and governance. Many more companies putting purpose at the core, and those that did being more successful with their businesses. And yes, increasingly the younger generation speaking up with a growing call for ambition and speed of implementation. Some early trends are emerging to actually confirm that hope. We're seeing an acceleration on climate action. Before the pandemic, about 18 months ago, only 25% of the world had a decarbonization horizon. Now, 75% of the world economy has it. Corporates are moving. Over 1,000 companies, major companies, signed up to the science-based initiatives. Employees are speaking up or walking out. Consumers are putting their money where their mouth is. And increasingly, we're obviously seeing government action put into policy, with the European Green Deal, with putting the task force of financial disclosure of climate-related risks in law, by looking at standard setting with the Sustainable Standard Board, etc. And the financial community is reacting. Very encouraging to see, for example, the $70 trillion of assets under management related to the Glasgow Financial Alliance for Net Zero. We are all moving. And frankly, if the ones aren't moving, you'll get shareholder activism, as we've seen with companies like Exxon or Chevron or Shell just last week alone. And if the governments aren't moving, the citizens are suing them. We've seen that in my home country, the Netherlands, in Germany, in Australia around coal. It is time for all of us to deliver not only our share of our contributions, but actually go into overdrive to make our growth inclusive and sustainable for years to come. 2020 is a very important year for the global agenda. We have the G7, we have the G20, the UN Biodiversity Conference, the IUCN, the COP26 in Glasgow. all of those important milestones to walk the walk instead of talk the talk. Collaboration will be a key element of that. That is goal number 17 in the SDGs. None of us can do this alone. This is a major transformation of the global economy that needs to happen at the maximum speed, scale, and impact. It requires, above all, the courage and the willpower of all of us. Leadership is probably the most important ingredient that we need. Leadership that is courageous, coming from the French word cœur, rose from the heart as well as from the head. We need leaders that understand that putting the interest of others ahead of their own, they're ultimately better off themselves as well. Leaders that are systemic thinkers, that can work in partnership, that think intergenerational, but above all, leaders that work with a high sense of purpose. It was the Dalai Lama who said that if you seek enlightenment for yourself, simply to enhance your own causes, you are without purpose. But if you seek enlightenment to help others achieve their objectives, you are with purpose. My message to you, to all of you, courageous leaders that lead these enormous companies that can transform the world, is very simply, show the leadership that the world now needs, embrace the youth and all others that were previously excluded, and drive for that sustainable, inclusive growth. This is our moment to put our words into action. Looking forward to the next 2 days, you will talk about the need to raise the corporate ambitions and to take collective actions to achieve the SDGs, now needed more at the speed and scale I talked about. I'll pass it now over to Julia Sweet, who is the CEO of Accenture, and to our CEO of the UN Global Compact, Sanda Ojiambo, who will take it from here. I thank you, but I thank you above all for the leadership that you're showing. Thank you very much.
Well, hello, Julie. How are you? It's really great to see you again, and I hope you're keeping well. Julie, it's such an exciting time to be part of the UN Global Compact, and we're really pleased to announce the results of this year's survey and the CEO survey. As you know, Julie, it's been great to partner with Accenture to do this survey, and we've collected the views of more than 1,300 participating companies and 1,000 CEOs worldwide to provide an unfiltered assessment of how businesses are addressing global challenges. And we've looked at this from the perspective of the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic to progress on climate action in the months before COP26 in November. Julie, I'm truly honored to have you here today to share with me and to discuss a few preliminary takeaways from this valued initiative. So Julie Sweet, thank you. And I just wanted to find out my first real, discussion point with you. Our CEO research reveals various trends on the state of sustainability. And as you engage with CEOs, how has the pandemic impacted the business conversation around sustainability?
Well, Sanda, first of all, it's great to be here and exciting to give people a glimpse of our research and really also talk just about what we're seeing today in the corporate world, because as has been a big theme already of this summit, leadership matters. And so I think our research that we do together around what's on the mind of the CEOs is really important. I think there's two things that have really stood out from the research that we also see in the market. The first is nearly 80% of CEOs believe there is more of a need to embed sustainability into their businesses today. And that has been triggered by the pandemic. And when you think about that, it's a staggering percentage, right? So it's an acknowledgement of need. The second piece, which is also very important, is slightly less. So I would have liked maybe around more like 80%, but about 73% of CEOs, so 3 out of 4, believe that the pressure to embed sustainability will increase in the years to come. And, why is this so important? So first of all, they're really acknowledgement of a need is important when you think about setting business priorities, and then recognizing that the pressure that often is a good way of triggering actions is increasing are both very positive, that we'll continue to see real action. And frankly, that's what we see in the market. We see both a commitment that is genuine and authentic, and also a recognition of the business value that comes from embedding sustainability, whether that's in stronger communities, whether it's because consumers care, or because employees care, because all of those three things are relevant to CEOs. Now, Sanda, for me, I focus, of course, on the CEOs and whether or not the research is demonstrating what we're actually seeing in the market. But for you, what's been the most exciting part of the research?
Thanks, Julie. It's been an interesting year in terms of growth at the Global Compacts, and I alluded to this in my opening comments. But, our participant base has really grown over the year. And overall, what we're seeing in the research is that our business participants are taking a lot more interest in business sustainability, corporate sustainability, and they all do want to transition to new business models. The research has shown us that about 70% of CEOs also say that COVID-19 has really increased the importance of corporate responsibility and corporate sustainability in their work. And we dug a little bit further, and we saw that 67% of SMEs also agreed with this sentiment, 73% of larger companies. So, that really just shows us that the COVID pandemic year truly has been a year of reflection and of understanding about the importance of sustainability and responsibility. We asked companies what were the most important areas for them in terms of this piece of work in the context of COVID-19. And 93% said that looking at occupational health and safety was important. 55% stated that ensuring stable job growth was another important variable. 53% talked about supply chain sustainability, and 43% talked about the urgency of the climate crisis. This year, with a broader participant base, we also surveyed an equal number of CEOs from the Global North and the Global South. And that is really helping us gain a much broader and nuanced, holistic picture of the pandemic and its impact and the wider sustainability trends. But Julie, we also noted significant differences between regions. Twice as many CEOs in the Global South, that's 42%, said that the pandemic had negatively impacted their sustainability efforts, compared to just over 20% in the Global North. 53% of CEOs in the Global North said that the pandemic had no impact on their sustainability budget, compared to 38% in the Global South. So it's very clear that issues around budgeting, financial decisions, and overall organizational direction do vary from North to South. Specifically, about 40% of CEOs based in the Global South said that the pandemic has resulted in a reduction in their sustainability budget, compared to 24% in the Global North. So it's been exciting to be able to take a more nuanced view around what CEOs are seeing, doing, and having to action in their companies. But what's very clear is that budgeting, financial decisions, and all are important to all, but it's hitting companies in the Global South harder than it is those in the Global North. Julie, of course, there's a lot more nuanced data, and we've spoken primarily about some of the difficult budget and financial decisions that CEO has had to make. But how do you feel that business leaders around the world can shift to more sustainable business models that address all of these vast disparities?
We started with the need for commitment and pressure, but now you really have to think about providing the things that you need when you execute on a business priority. So you need certain goals, you need data, right? The ability to measure progress and an action plan. And what we saw in the research is that we're missing some of those critical elements that will make it easier, whether you're in the North or the South. So for example, a good percentage of around 63% of CEOs say that they actually struggle to measure actions related to sustainability. They also say about the same percentage have difficulty measuring the ROI. Now, just think about this, right? As CEOs are accountable to all of their stakeholders. They're committed. They know there's pressure. But at the end of the day, to your point, they need to be able to budget, measure investment, demonstrate even to their consumers and employees that they're actually investing in something's happening. And so this is why the work that we've been doing together with you, 3M and SAP, with over 600 companies around the world, to really look at processes, about how you measure, but how to incorporate this, is really important work. And it's important because it's helping enterprises of all sizes. And as you said earlier, the small and medium-sized enterprises are very important parts of the economy. They're job creations. They struggle with the same issues, often without the same means. And so I think the research is pointing the way to the actions that we need to take, some of which we've already begun as a group here, but we're also working with technology companies who are developing solutions to make these things easier. Now, Sanda, when you think about these disparities between North and South, do you have any things that you want to put on the table for all of us as CEOs to think about?
Sure, Julian. I think I just want to, cite the work that we're doing around the SDG Ambition and how that's really helping us hardwire some of these important decisions and actions that we do need to take around bridging that ambition-action gap. With the SDG Ambition program that we're so happy and proud that we do together, along with other partners, we've just celebrated our first class of 600 companies across 65 countries going through this accelerator program. And the feedback throughout the accelerator has been really positive. And together, I think we've helped shape these companies' ability to set ambitious goals and drive them forward into real action, integrating these goals into business functions and better deploying technology for sustainability. We took a look at, what the feedback that the companies gave us, and 80% of them told us that the program had helped identify new areas for their companies to contribute to the SDGs. And this is truly exciting to see because the study results demonstrate that whereas there are critical gaps where business, should be taking action is positive. And I think that now that this first round is wrapping up, we look forward to really seeing these new transformative goals that companies are setting as a result. And I think it's been really great to see this feedback and I'm excited to launch, the second round of this. Julie, just your reflections on round one of SDG Ambition. What do you feel? How's that gone for yourselves?
Well, look, I echo your sentiments. The reactions have been really strong. We've also learned a lot from doing that we're now going to be able to help in round two in terms of what really are the struggles, what are the things that both can be educated through awareness, as well as where do we need, more technology solutions. And I think as we look around, we've also been, really identifying where are the biggest opportunities. And our latest research is validating some of what we saw in those workshops, for example, around supply chain. So our latest research that we've done, that we've just been talking about today, said that 53% of CEOs from the largest companies have said that extending sustainability through their supply chains is very difficult. When you think about the work that we did with these 600 companies that spanned different enterprises, we saw those issues, right? We saw why there are those struggles. And so, in some ways we're kind of coalescing around what are the problems, but the work also helped us begin to see the solutions. And one of the trends that we're seeing more broadly, actually, among large companies is the opportunity to help small and medium-sized enterprises as a business opportunity. So you're seeing that, for example, in the telco industry, and sort of providing platforms of one-to-many. You're also seeing that in some of the work that banks are doing in terms of making capital available. And we see an opportunity in sustainability to be thinking about solutions that are one-to-many solutions. And the last thing I would say for larger companies is that there's also an opportunity to help mentor small and medium-sized enterprises that serve large companies. So we have a program at Accenture, for example, in 20 countries around the world, where we focus on diverse suppliers. And in many of those countries, we have development programs to help the leaders of those companies scale. And we're now also incorporating this focus on sustainability to help them find cost-effective ways by taking lessons from other companies to help achieve these goals.
Thanks, Julie. I completely agree. Such great learnings. And, from the cohort, we've seen that when leaders really do prioritize sustainability action and when they raise their ambition across targets, action does happen. And we truly look forward to the second round of our collaboration. Julie, thank you so much for sharing your insights and your perspective. And also that we look forward to receiving the full report in November, when we can talk a lot more about leadership insights during this COVID pandemic here. Thank you so much, Julie. It's been great chatting to you.
Great to see you, Sanda. And I'm also really looking forward to November, sharing more of this research and also sharing more of the actionable insights that we're getting from the work with these 600 companies in our next round. So thanks so much for your leadership. And I hope to see you in person in November.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Sanda Ojiambo is the Executive Director of the UN Global Compact. Julie Sweet is the CEO of Accenture. Thank you both. So we have spoken a lot about how do you raise your ambition level within organizations internally. But what about raising ambition levels and organizations influencing each other and your sector? That is a much broader picture. Let me tell you about an ambition loop. It's very relevant to what we're talking about today. So you get bold government policies, put them together with great leadership from the private sector. They reinforce each other, creating action that then results in a more equitable future, sustainable future for all of us. That is an ambition loop. You're going to be hearing about that ambition loop more and more through the day and through the next, where are we now, 23 hours or so before the end of our Leaders Summit. This next session takes a look at multi-stakeholder approaches for collective ambitious approaches. Your host is Karen Cho. I'm going to hand over to Karen. Hello, Karen.
Hello, I'm Karen Cho, anchor for CNBC. Joining me now is women's rights activist Sadia Toure, who is also the founder and president of Mali Muso. Thank you so much for joining me today, Sadia. You're a 23-year-old author. You've been trying to shine the light on women and empower them through education to try and avoid gender-based violence. Just give us a sense of the progress you've been making in 2021 despite the pandemic, and whether the goalpost has shifted a little bit further out given some of the challenges you might have faced this year.
Okay. So thank you for the question, and thank you for inviting me to join this incredible event. So from my perspective, and coming from Mali, a country where the goal one is not is not met. For example, we don't have peace in the country, and then we also have we are living in a pandemic situation. So we have like two kind of challenges. And then the other challenge is that we are a very conservative society, which is really hard to meet even the challenges and the commitment the government is doing in United Nations back in the country is difficult to meet them. So some progressive change in for the SDGs goals are that I can say the program Spotlight, and I can Spotlight is giving women it's like a global program of United Nations, and there is UNDP, there is UNFPA, there is UN Women, and they are targeting different types of the goals And we are working on sensitization on gender-based violence. And in our country is very difficult, especially for religious leaders. And then what is more difficult for the SDGs is that people, when you talk about SDGs, people don't think first about themselves. They don't see themselves in SDGs. They don't see that SDGs is just here, like no hunger, no poverty, no war in the world, peace in the world. But people just see that it is something created by United Nations. And in our country, is it what is coming from other countries, especially United Nations, are not every time positive. And this is being like a very challenge we are facing in trying to meet and trying to advocate for SDGs. So that's why when we sensitize people, we add a kind of human position and showing that they are related to these goals. So that's how we are doing, and it is really working here. And I can say that we are doing progress. It is going very, very slowly, but we are meeting the goals.
Can we talk about slippage then during the pandemic? Because there are fears women in particular have been hard hit by the pandemic, with lockdown restrictions and what may happen behind closed doors, as well as the extra chores, the household duties, and then, of course, what we see with poverty and hunger. How concerned that you may be seeing some slippage and that the program may be slightly off track towards the SDGs?
If I understand the question, if I understand what you are asking me is this pandemic is really being very rude for everybody, but more for women. And we work a lot with rural people. And what's happened is before, we had some commitments from religious leaders, from community leaders to stop certain things like female genital mutilation, like child marriage. But what is happening now is that a lot of people are losing their jobs. A lot of people are losing opportunities due to the COVID. So what's happening now, if the father loses his job and they don't have money to carry or to afford how to eat, how to take care of the house. So what's happened is that they know that it is not good to give a child to a marriage, but because they don't have money, they need an income. So they just send their daughter to a marriage. So these are, with this pandemic, we have seen a high rate of child marriage, of the practice of female genital mutilation, because a lot of women also are having money from this practice. So that's why when they don't have jobs, they just go back to what they are doing. So it's a thought moment for us, because what we have obtained before are now being we don't have anything now. So we're restarting again, and which is not every time simple.
What's your message to religious leaders, community leaders, governments, business about the role they can adopt here so you stay on track and accelerate towards those SDGs?
Okay, my message first to UN is to create more partnership and create more strategic partnership. I'm Sadia, and I'm being known in my country as a civil society activist, but there are a lot of young women, young people working on SDGs, but they don't know what is SDGs, but they are tackling the issues of SDGs. So how UN can create partnerships with these young people who are not educated, who are not around the table, who have not the voice, but in their community, they have a lot of voice. So that's my first message for UN. And the other message for government is that they have to also be not just to sign papers outside the country, not just to stand outside, to stand up outside the country, and back then just being sitting there and giving all the work to the society, civil society activists or NGOs, but they have also the right to monitor their commitment, to make sure that their commitment are being met, and then to make sure that the commitment they are doing are a political engagement. So that's my message for the government. And then the message for religious leaders are, if we involve them, we can have them on board with us. So this is part also of the partnership, how UN can come to them with and taking in consideration of their culture, of how they think, like without a battle of, so how UN can come to them and then explain them, we know that we all need peace, and this is part of SDG. We all need quality education, we all need quality water, and we all need strong institutions, we all need justice. So how you as religious leaders, as community leaders, can stand up for this for this engagement, and not just because UN are asking you, but because it is also your duty to protect and to make sure that your community is being fulfilled.
What is your call to action for business in response to the challenges the world faces today?
Okay. COVID has been very tough for women, for everybody. But what we also have seen is it had also given a lot of opportunities, especially to women. Women were facing harassment in their workplace. They had no space for them, like at every point of their career, they was obliged to choose either being at work or either being with, for example, with her newborn. So now that a lot of people are working from home, so I think that this is a kind of opportunity we can see that COVID has bring. A woman can be fulfilled in her work, but still being at home and still doing what she likes, And my call to action is like for businesses, that there is no more excuse now to employ women, because work are being done. They are at home, but they are doing their job. They are doing what they have to do. So my call to action is to giving more opportunities, more spaces to women, and how businesses can create systems that women have mentors and they have sponsors too. So mentors to help them and to show them what path in their career they can do, and sponsors for this can be men, they can also be women, to advocate for them, and the sponsors should also be people who are in decision-making positions for women, and to take commitment for women and with women. So this is my call to action: create more spaces for women, more opportunities for them, include and create inclusion without discriminating them.
Right. Just finally, can I ask you about the commitment you're seeing from business in 2021? We keep hearing from business that they are moving towards greater ESG, but are you really seeing it in your country as businesses roll out some of their plans for 2021? Is it any different this year in what you're seeing versus prior years?
Okay. Yes, I can say that in my country, there have been a lot of opportunity that has been created by businesses, and I think that this has been also done because we've seen that either business or either civil society or either government, we are finally looking for the same thing. So in my country, I can say that businesses have taken more responsibility to create more social activities. And then I can give you an example without naming the organization itself. So due to the crisis in the center of Mali, there are a lot of displaced people that had come in the city, so they don't have anywhere to live, and they were living like in a big. There is a need for everything because they quit everything to come in the city. They don't know anybody. So people from civil society have been a lot of advocacy on how we can help these people to eat, how we can help them to be in a safe situation. And a lot of businesses and a lot of private organizations have been helping them to build houses for them and to create opportunities with some NGOs, and there is a lot of initiative going with these women and even with these people, how still living in Bamako but still having opportunities to have some incomes being here in Mali. And then a lot of, even for businesses, I've seen a lot of women creating new businesses by themselves, quitting their jobs because they had spaces and they had time at home to be more concentrate on their own projects. So right. I think that I was very happy to see a lot of women launching their initiatives over there and then being able to take their destiny like in their own hands.
Sadia, thank you so much. We must leave it there. We appreciate your time. Sadia Touré joining us, President of Mali Musée. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Nice work, ladies. Sanda Touré and Karen Chow. So, companies setting ambitious goals to tackle complex challenges. Who is doing that? Who is doing that right now? So glad you asked. I want to bring in your next moderator. Her name is Rachel Panino. Rachel, hello.
Hi, Femi.
Hi there, Rachel. Rachel, when you're not moderating, you are doing another very important job. Tell us what that is, please.
Yes, I am the Executive Director for the Global Compact Network here in the UAE. So it's all hands on deck here. Very busy.
I will let you get on with your panel. Rachel, over to you.
Thank you so much for the intro. Hello, good afternoon, good morning to you from Dubai, and welcome to the panel discussion as part of the United Nations Global Compact Leaders Summit 2021. As I mentioned, I'm the Executive Director for the Global Compact Network here in the UAE, hosted by the World Green Economy Organization. And today I will be joined by 3 speakers representing organizations who have all participated in the United Nations Global Compact Global Impact Initiative, SDG Ambition. The United Nations Secretary General has said that it is abundantly clear that a much deeper, faster, and more ambitious response is needed to unleash social and economic transformation to achieve our 2030 goals. We have already heard from Paul Polman, Sanda Ojiambo, and Julie Sweet on the need for ambition, and also a number of speakers on the role of different stakeholders in driving ambition. Through our upcoming conversation, you will hear from companies who are responding to this call to action by setting ambitious goals to tackle those complex challenges. The time is now to make sure that the SDGs are part of the core of business purpose and strategies. And it's clear the private sector are ambitious enough to do this, but understanding how is where achieving the SDGs fall short. So with that in mind, I'm delighted to be joined today by 3 organizations who participated in the successful first round of the Sdg Ambition Accelerator. The first round saw over 600 companies participate in over 65 countries worldwide through 30 local networks of the United Nations Global Compact. And I can safely say that from the UAE's experience, it was met with significant passion and positivity by the companies participating. So over to our speakers, I would like to introduce Teresa Vernaglia, President of BRK Ambiental, Eva Ivars, CEO of Alain Afflelu España, and Gail Schuler, Senior Vice President and Chief Sustainability Officer for 3M, who is also a patron to the Sdg Ambition Accelerator. I'd also quickly like to note that unfortunately Rowena Hay, who was supposed to be our 4th speaker today, has fallen ill and isn't able to join us. And we will miss hearing about Umboto Africa and their experience in the Sdg Ambition Accelerator with Network South Africa. So with that, welcome ladies to this discussion. And I just say that it is extremely inspiring to see women holding such leading positions globally. And I'd like to start by asking you all the same question, as I believe it will give our audience some real practical insight. My question is that we are all aware that we are currently off track to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals. What does ambitious action for the SDGs look like for your company? And has the COVID-19 pandemic impacted or reinforced these aspirations?
Just to give you a framework, I have to say that we are the leading European optical and hearing franchisor, and our mission today is to facilitate access to products and services that help people connect with each other. So when the pandemic arrived, as a company, we were already convinced that acting responsibly is not a choice anymore, but this is a business imperative. However, we needed to pass to action. Even though we were already offering philanthropic and one-off initiatives since 2007 with our Alain Afflelu Foundation, we decided it was time to move to a more holistic and integrated strategy. We thought that the SDGs could offer a framework to lead towards such transformation. We joined United Nations Global Compact in the middle of the pandemic in May 2020, becoming the first optical company in Spain to join this global institution, and even inspiring other optical companies in the country to do the same and join a Global Compact. The first step were understanding and prioritizing while taking into account our key stakeholders in the process. We determined the goals aligned with our business strategy and our main stakeholders. And to do that, we made a survey among clients, franchisors, employees, defining our priority goals. We defined number 3, 8, and 12. And finally, during this last year, we have progressed in 2 parallel tracks. On one hand, start building a CSR and sustainability culture to transform our commitments into tangible business actions. And we have disclosed meaningful objectives and targets related to the goals. This will help implement them into operations and not only in the strategy. And the next step is to determine the KPIs. So I can say that we are proud that this year, in July, we will publish our first sustainability report to demonstrate our investors, peers, and our own employees how and why SDGs are helping to improve our business.
Thank you, Teresa, and congratulations on your first sustainability report. That's fantastic to hear. Gail, could I ask you for your insight about 3M?
Absolutely. At 3M, we've aligned our strategic sustainability framework and our corporate goals with the UN SDGs to drive action on the world's greatest challenges. COVID-19 and its widespread impact underscored that we need to do more to protect the health of our planet and our people. It's because of the pandemic, I believe, that 2020 was a pivotal year, and 2021 is continuing to be an inflection point to advance sustainability. There's increased awareness of the challenges that we face and the positive impact and momentum building to create change, which gives us more opportunities to collaborate with others to find more sustainable solutions and expand our potential impact. 3M has remained diligent in our commitment to advancing sustainability, both in our own operations and across our global communities. We've made positive progress on our goals, and we've amplified impact through improvements in our manufacturing processes, the environmental footprints of our products and solutions, and external partnerships that drive systemic change. And as an ambitious start for this year, we began with announcing in February advancements on SDG 13, our alignment with our 3M Science for Climate pillar. We committed to 100% carbon neutrality, net zero emissions in our operations by 2050, with interim targets of 50% reduction between 2019 and 2030 and 80% reduction by 2040. On Earth Day, we increased our commitments again and acted on SDG 12 for responsible consumption and production through a new goal to reduce our dependence on virgin fossil-based plastics by 125 million pounds by 2025. That's more than 5 times the weight of the Eiffel Tower. We intend to continue to use our passion and a science-based approach to tackle challenges where we can make the biggest impact, increasing our commitments and building a better future for our planet by working with others.
Thanks, Gail. I love that you've got a net zero strategy. That's fantastic to hear, and very ambitious. Teresa, I'd like to ask you the same question, and I'm not sure if you heard the question. I'll repeat it quickly. What does ambitious action for the SDGs look like for your company, and has the COVID-19 pandemic impacted or even reinforced these ambitions?
Okay, Raquel, so thank you for repeating the questions. I was not listening at the beginning, so good morning, you all, and thank you for inviting me to share BRK initiatives. And Raquel, I would like to say that BRK as a private sanitation company and serving more than 60 million Brazilians with clean water and sanitation, I would say that the ambition actions for the SDGs means to us the sustainability of our business model, as we depend on the availability of water sources to treat and distribute clean water for the Brazilian people, the 16 million people. So it's mandatory to keep our business. And furthermore, as the duration, SDG 6, and furthermore, as the duration of our concessions is around 35 years, we are also committed with the climate change, that's SDG 13, through the reduction of water losses. In Brazil, just to let you know, we are now facing one of the most severe drought in 100 years. However, in contradiction, the average water losses, it's around 30-80%, which means losing almost 80,000 Olympic pools of clean water per day, a volume that would serve 63 million people per year, which is equivalent 30% of Brazilian population. In the Spain and US, the countries represented here by my colleagues panelists are 25, 24%, and 12% respectively. And 100% out of more than 5,000 municipalities in Brazil concentrate 40% of total population, and just 3 of these 100 has losses at 50% level. And one of these 3 cities is Limeira, served by BRK. And in Limeira, Raquel, our water losses reduction program has allowed us to keep the current water catchments at the same levels of 1995, 26 years ago, even though the population has doubled the size. So our operations, we are committed to water losses program reduction. And since 2018, we have saved almost 10 billion liters of water, volume equivalent to attend a municipality with 200,000 inhabitants for a year. And regarding the COVID-19, besides the health crisis, it has highlighted the urgent call to action to spread out clean water and sanitation for all, especially if we take into account that hand washing is one of the most effective actions to prevent contamination. And according to United Nations, up to 40% of the global population, 3 billion people, live without water available at home. In Brazil, it's 35 million do not without access to potable water. So again, I do believe that this sad reality has reinforced the need to pursue the ambitions for SDG, in the case of BRK, SDG 3 and also the 13, to guarantee that we will reach the sustainability of our business and also our commitment with the UN goals.
Thank you, Teresa. Thank you all for sharing your insight. I would like to now shift the conversation to your participation in the SDG Ambition Accelerator itself. As part of the accelerator, companies are taken through facilitated workshops to identify new goals in line with SDG ambition benchmarks. So, Teresa, back to you. How has participating in the SDG Ambition Accelerator influenced the ambitions to contribute to SDGs for BRK Ambiental? And for the sake of time, if we could, I don't want to keep the answers short, but if we could just monitor the time. So if I could give 1 minute to everybody speaking, that would be great. Thank you.
Okay. So by understanding the connection of SDG 13, climate action, and the 7, clean energy, with our operations, we are able to address specific goals for energy efficiency and renewable energy. By the end of this year, we will reach 50% of the electricity consumption with the renewable energy. And we have already installed a solar plant in the northeast of Brazil, and the 3 more will be installed by end of this year. And this goal is mandatory questions for the sanitation company, as we are intensive in power consumption, mainly to attend the sewage treatment plants. And on the road to universalization that we are pursuing here in Brazil, we will need many of these facilities, and doing it efficiently will be key to support to accelerate the SDG, to achieve the SDG 13 and also SDG 7 at our operations.
Thanks, Teresa. And Gail, I know that as a patron to the Accelerator program, 3M participated across 3 different tracks, which is fantastic. Can you also add to this on how the Accelerator program influenced your ambitions at 3M?
Absolutely. So since participating in the UNGC since 2014, we've consistently affirmed and strengthened our drive for the SDGs, as well as the UNGC's 10 principles. Last year, we became a patron sponsor, as you noticed, and our motivation was to learn for our different organizations around the world, but also to give back and to help other companies, especially SMEs, work towards a more sustainable future. 3M has already integrated SDGs into the goals and business strategies across a variety of parts of our company, including healthcare, transportation safety, renewable energy, and personal safety. So we've seen firsthand how beneficial it is to partner with others to amplify a positive impact with customers and with broader society. So we wanted to extend and amplify this impact with the SDG Ambition program. So we did engage 3 of our organizations around the world, the United States, Canada, and Russia in the process. And we learned some really interesting things. We definitely learned that there were some things we were doing well, but we learned how much more we could do working with others. So we learned that principles and benchmarks provide a strong framework for leaders to build pathways, identify pain points, and drive key actions to reach goals. We found it was a beneficial process for companies starting out in this space or looking to expand and evolve their thinking through inspiration from others. So we really found it to be helpful for more aspirational and ambitious goal setting, and it provides a structured approach to goal setting, especially for those who are just starting out.
Thanks, Gail. Ava, I know that gender equality has been a priority for you. Could you share some insight on how the content of the accelerator influenced your ambitions as well?
Thank you. Yes, being part of the accelerator program means that we are not alone and help us to feel part of something bigger than ourselves because we just joined the Global Compact. The accelerator program is helping us to set business objectives related to the SDGs and clearly determine how to measure them. We as companies are used to measure sales, marketing, or financial objectives, but it's more difficult when talking about sustainable goals. For example, for SDG 3, we consider that visual health is everyone's right. So we have implemented some campaigns in line with the pandemic. And now we are working on inclusion with Red Cross to identify vulnerable groups and provide them with glasses for them to be able to work with proper conditions. On education, we have launched a public awareness campaign on the importance of checking your eyesight. We test kids' vision, and if they need glasses, we give them glasses for free to avoid a school failure. This year, we have given away 20,000 glasses. During this time, we have also worked for SDG 8. We have reviewed our relationship with some of our main stakeholders, for example, signing a new trade union agreement with a strong impact condition of our employees and relationship with our franchisees. And we are committed with talent. We are signing an agreement with university like the UNIR to launch the first optical and optometry digital degree in Spain. And if I summarize the key results of the work we are doing for SDG 12, in this last year, we have prioritized our eco-responsible production with more than 100,000 frames and 1 million bio-lens crystals. But as this is not enough, in the last month, we have launched 2 collections of glasses, one made from sustainable material, eco-friendly, from castor oil, and another called H2O, made with plastic bottles recovered from the ocean. The fight against climate change, good health, and decent working conditions will be our priority for the next decade.
That is fantastic innovation, and I would love to learn more about that in another discussion. Thank you all. We're coming to the end of our conversation, and I would like to close this panel by moving on to a slightly broader question. We have hardly any time left, but I would really like to hear from you. And I want to ask our speakers what you would say to motivate other leaders around the need to take ambitious action to achieve the SDGs in very few words, as little words as possible. Ava, can I start with you, please?
Yeah, I can say that it's obvious that for SDGs, too much is not enough. And with the companies play a fundamental role in changing the current model. But I will concentrate on 3 main reasons to take ambitious action. One is there is a market opportunity. SDGs could create 380 million jobs and help unlock at least $12 trillion in opportunity for business by 2030. Second, business self-care and consumers' loyalty. The pandemic has accelerated the sense of urgency with sustainability. There is a growing evidence that consumers are more and more aware of companies engaged with sustainability and are ready to support brands with their wallets, willing to pay more for sustainable goods. And last but not least, I would say that the Earth can and will survive without us. We, on the other hand, as human beings, should care more about the human species than about the Earth in order to win time, even if we look at it from a selfish point of view. For many experts, the question is not if humans will become extinct, but when this will happen. And there are some who think it will be sooner rather than later. More than 90% of the species that have existed on the Earth have disappeared, most during catastrophes and extinctions like the one that wiped out dinosaurs. Before long, all that will be left of humanity would be a thin layer of plastic, radioactive isotopes, and chicken bones in the fossil record, as we kill 60 billion chickens per year. So it's time to move.
Thanks, Eva. Teresa, could I ask for your quick insight on this as well?
Sure, Raquel. So as a spokesperson of SDG 6 in Brazil, I would say that the alignment of the ESG agenda, especially the SDGs, is not just good business. It represents opportunity, risk management, build a resilient infrastructure business, and the guarantee of investments and the returns for the stakeholders. The environmental, social, and governance criteria is not a matter of choice or just a competitive advantage. The commitment to the SDG agenda, and we are seeing this in a daily basis running this business, will define which business will remain, will thrive. That's why leaders needed to look at the process and take the responsibility right now.
Perfect, thank you. And last but definitely not least, Gail, please, your thoughts on this.
Well, thank you so much. And great points made by my esteemed panelists and so many of the previous presenters today. One thing I'd like to reinforce is that we know that aggressive and immediate action must be taken to address our planet's many sustainability-related challenges. But as a science company, it's so important, and I feel like I need to just resonate with everyone else, that these plans and actions be based on science. We take an approach that's called math with a path internally, where we map out what it takes to be done. What is the impact that will be achieved? What pieces do we know how to do and have specific timelines for? How do we set up our resources and costs to do that, investments to do that? But then identify where there are gaps and how to partner with others to make that happen. So just reinforcing urgency, science-based, and partnering with others, because there's nothing more important than we can be working on than advancing the sustainability of our planet and the people who live on it. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Gail. I think you hit the nail on the head with that last statement and ended our conversation perfectly. Thank you all for the insightful discussion. It's clear that through the SDG Ambition Accelerator, companies have found the ability to really level up their goals to create more ambitious plans. And it's really exciting to see the commitment that your three organizations have made, along with many companies around the world. And from the UAE local networks rollout, with both large and small companies participating, the sharing of best practices and willingness to support each other to drive this ambition was extremely prevalent. Through the SDG Ambition Accelerator, we really hope to encourage thousands of companies around the world to step up and turn commitment into action by aligning with the SDG business benchmarks within the program itself. Round 2 of the program is launching for company recruitment in parallel to the Leader Summit, with over 30 local networks participating this round. And I really hope that through the following sessions throughout the agenda over the next couple of days and the success stories showcase and many more companies who participated in round 1, more organizations will see the importance of the Accelerator program and how the program itself supports companies in being more bold, ambitious, and transformational in how they run their businesses to deliver on the 2030 agenda. I'd like to invite all of you to think critically about how your companies can answer the call to the decade of action by being more ambitious. And please do join the upcoming plenary sessions and side events to gain more insight. So thank you to our speakers again today. I hope our audience enjoyed the conversation. I really believe it shed light on the importance of moving beyond incremental progress and achieving greater levels of ambition on the Sustainable Development Goals. Thank you, and back to you, Femi.
Joining me now is Abby Maxman, who is the President and CEO of Oxfam America. Abby, from your perspective, what is the current state of progress that you're witnessing towards the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development? What is happening through your lens?
Well, Karen, the role of business is actually fundamental in achieving the SDGs. And as we look at them and progress, companies by and large have not really delivered to date. Let's be clear, we see a critical role of business to help us achieve the SDGs. But many companies are reaping the reputational benefits of the SDGs without making real meaningful contributions. And so ambitious action looks very different from what we're seeing currently. And we know that real ambition actions start with understanding one's business impact on the SDGs, both positive and negative, And it requires having a real honest conversation about how companies' business model and corporate strategy need to be reformed so as to align with the ambition of the SDGs. And this is really different from what many companies are taking as an approach, which is often to start with their existing business models and incentives and looking for overlaps with the SDG agenda. And, I really want to talk about what we've seen and analyzed as Oxfam. We have looked at more than 70 companies and have found very little evidence for ambitious actions. And instead, we've been seeing many companies do four big things that I'd like to talk a little bit about. One, repackaging. Second, cherry picking. Third, agenda setting. And fourth, decoupling. And so if I could take a minute to just outline what those look like, and that's what we're seeing actually happening in reality. The repackaging is companies are actually taking what they're doing and doing that old wine in new bottles approach. We see very few companies making new commitments as a result of engaging with the SDGs. And if you take SDG 1, no poverty, for example, in many ways, this is the most important of the SDGs. These big questions. What is your business doing to address inequality and drive inclusive growth? Are you committed to a living wage for your employees and using your leverage and might to extend living incomes into the supply chain? And the SDGs should be sparking ambitious efforts and new bold commitments and ways of working that really go beyond using the SDGs as a communication tool. The second area that is a little bit similar, cherry picking to work on the SDGs that are really easiest to engage with. And our findings at Oxfam suggest that companies prioritize SDGs based on corporate self-interest rather than impact, as evidenced by their frequent use of the financial materiality to really justify prioritization. And we saw phrases such as material to us, relevant to our business, aligned with our business strategy, which I get, of course, but defining materiality only in financial terms actually skews priorities towards business benefits rather than SDG impact. And so we need that to be reversed, really. A third quick area, this notion of agenda setting, where the SDGs should function as the framework to guide the company's sustainability activities to maximize the impact, but we're seeing the inverse. And fourth, this notion of decoupling their own business from their SDG engagements. And we saw large asset managers like BlackRock make commitments towards protecting human rights, but presented in a way that really places emphasis on material risk to business and not on the human rights risk to people. And we see the voting records on human rights proposals over the last year at company meetings and the voting behavior of BlackRock showing that it voted against these proposals in 88% of the cases. So those are some areas that we're seeing lack of commitment and lack of alignment versus the rhetoric.
Abby, you've called out one of the biggest fund managers in the world there. At the same time, we are seeing a huge commitment from investors, from the corporates towards ESG, as well as these goal setting around SDGs. What's going wrong? The commitment seems to be there, but something is falling through the cracks. Is it just because of COVID and the pandemic that we've witnessed over the past 12 months or so?
Oh, well, I wouldn't say it's just because of COVID. I think, we really have seen this decoupling, these issues happening where the commitments of the big, for example, the 10 biggest food brands and their large suppliers and the agribusinesses who supply the main ingredients to food brands such as cocoa, sugar, and palm oil, there's a real disconnect there between the commitments and actually what's happening in the supply chain. And we recently produced a report called Shining a Spotlight, where we did see the changes in policies at headquarters levels, but what really became clear was the commitments and policies were not integrated throughout the business and value chains. And that disconnect between commitment and practice in the supply chain was really significant. So an example of that is the big food brands signing up to the UN Women's Empowerment Principles, while only one of the 7 largest agribusinesses signed up to them.
Abby, we're talking about short-term, medium-term, and long-term here as we head towards 2030. And one of the concerns is that developed countries have been very quick to vaccinate, but leaving behind a lot of the developing world. And this may exacerbate the recovery, the economic recovery. In addition to that, we know supply chains are being reconfigured. So more of the production is brought back home, which could, again, have an impact on the GDP development of some of these developing nations. How concerned are you that we're setting the scene for a much longer term problem instead of addressing the goals that have been set out for 2030?
Well, I'm glad you're mentioning that, Karen. It's a fundamental concern. And as we look at the role of companies, you take Big Pharma. We've been calling and we've been part of the People's Vaccine Alliance. And, if we can't get shots into the arms of people everywhere, this is going to persist for a very long time. At the current rate, we've heard and we've talked about at the current rate of production and access, people won't get fully vaccinated till at best 2024. We know that's not good enough. We know that will ricochet and we will see the virus taking its toll, of course, on human lives, but economics and economic lives. We must prioritize a people's vaccine for the whole system to start working well together. We cannot continue the old practice in the economic model where you socialize the investment and privatize the profits, where big companies reap these massive rewards and the rest, often marginalized communities, women, are the ones where it takes its toll.
And what are your concerns around the supply chain challenge? Because there is a fear that given some of the nationalism we witnessed around key products and also vaccines, that you may see a fundamental shift in these supply chains, some of them away from these developing nations that have been benefiting.
Well, that is a fundamental concern. And again, this notion of a people's vaccine. We know that the WTO TRIPS waiver now is moving to very important negotiation stages, and that needs to be a priority, not as the only lever, but a suite of levers to get production, get access, get outreach, so that we get actual vaccines into people's arms. And it's just key. And for any blockers will actually block a resumption of this build back bolder, build back better, that will be better for everyone. It's going to be a race to the top versus a race to the bottom. And even rich countries who, we were very pleased to see the Biden administration support the WTO TRIPS waiver, but now it needs to move into action.
Abby, as we criticize some of the progress that's been made towards these goals for 2030, what can you say about the success? Have there been glimmers of hope that you've witnessed?
There really has, and I think there's real opportunity now for change. Prior to COVID, there was success in a number of areas for some years leading up. Certainly no hunger when we looked at some of the indicators on poverty and inequality, but we know that there is a fundamental relationship between poverty and inequality. And if you look at inequality, it is a precondition for delivering on any of the 17 goals. That is SDG 10, as we know. And I think if anything has been showcased during the pandemic is how inextricably linked inequality is with poverty and where the challenges are. So there are hopeful signs, but we must take real action to boost SDG progress post-COVID. And I'm glad to talk about some of those areas.
Well, let's just talk about the role that civil society can play here in encouraging and challenging business to contribute to the 2030 agenda. How do you think business and civil society can collaborate in partnership with each other and stakeholders to achieve the SDGs?
Oh, well, it's a wonderful question because it's fundamental. We need a vibrant, dynamic relationship between government, the private sector, and civil society for progress on the SDGs. We need a mobilized civil society to boost the momentum of the SDGs, to hold governments and businesses accountable to their commitments. We also need civil society activists to be protected. We've seen a very frightening regression and threat on civic space, erosion of human rights, and companies have real power to speak out against that and to make a fundamental change. There's a risk that governments are using the pandemic as a convenient opportunity and justification to impose more restrictions for political purposes. And we know that in 2020 alone, 46 countries have imposed new measures that affect freedom of expression, and 80% of the world's population is living in countries which have been rated repressed, obstructed, or closed. And civil society progress on the SDGs is reinforced. A lack of progress is only reinforced by an absence of a robust, dynamic civil society. And we know that when the reverse is true, it can be very different. We have examples in the US, Chile, Nigeria, Malawi that highlight what is possible when civil society is mobilized to deliver on local and international issues and priorities and delivering on human rights and the SDGs.
Nabi, can I ask you about the move that we're seeing afoot at the G7, the G20, and the OECD level to bring about a 15% global minimum tax? Do you think that will make a difference to corporations that have not been paying the fair amount of taxation over the last number of decades?
Well, it certainly would make a big difference, I think, on global development and delivering on the SDGs. There's a number of things, taxes, living wages, those are fundamental. And we can see fundamental investments that are necessary. We know that if one increases public spending on social protection programs that protect the most vulnerable, that has a significant positive impact. And we know that the inverse was true. Those who did not have social protection or a safety net fell back into poverty during COVID. We must really transform the economic model. We know that the economic fallout from COVID was no accident. The unequal impacts are the result of an economic model that really delivers profits for the wealthy while hurts the many. And as I mentioned, we saw that in vaccine development, the readiness to socialize investment and privatize profit. Companies need to pay their fair share. It's good for everybody. And they need to be able to invest in decent and dignified work, tax rich individuals and corporations. We know that the SDGs are really underfunded. It would be a huge positive step to tax the excess profits of just 32 of the world's largest corporations that have profited the most during the pandemic, which would have just raised at least $100 billion through our data, and invest in the things that matter, invest in women, invest in agriculture, invest in a green recovery.
Abby, we're out of time, but thank you so much for joining us with your perspective today. Abby Maxman, the President and CEO of Oxfam America.
Thanks so much, Karen.
Thank you very much.
And we wrap up this entire segment at the Leaders Summit looking at elevating ambition and collective action with a very close look and focus on business and technology.
I'm Dan Thomas, the Chief of Communications and Strategic Events at the UN Global Compact. And joining me now is Julia White, Chief Marketing and Solutions Officer from SAP. Thank you so much for joining us, Julia.
So good to be here. Thank you.
Julia, we know that bold decisions are required to achieve these Sustainable Development Goals. What would you say to other business leaders about the need to take ambitious action to achieve these goals?
I would say that it's time for businesses to embed sustainability into their core business processes, right? We can no longer have them treated as something outside a fundamental way that a company's run. And, just like every company looks at managing revenue and profits as absolutely essential, sustainability management and metrics need to have that same level of integration and importance, right? So to me, the bold decision is to stop treating it like something outside the core business, but make it really foundational to how every business is run. And just to give a little bit of example, right? Just think about managing your company costs and reducing inefficiency in supply chain, right? Today, there's over 100 billion tons of material that are used each year in the global supply chains, and remarkably, just 8.6% are recycled. Ugh. That means more than 50%, meanwhile, get thrown in landfills or discarded into the environment. So just an example of the opportunity we have in this area to do more.
And what is the role of the B2B relationships, the partnerships, or even competitors? What role can they play in inspiring industries to accelerate progress and really improve their practice?
Yeah, gosh, I think like the past 18 months, we're really seeing the B2B supply chain disruptions happening across the globe. And it's now become a dinner time conversation, or something that was not really talked about before. And I think the reality of B2B is like no company does business alone, right? And B2B supply chains have a significant impact on driving change in this area. We fundamentally, since sustainability is a shared problem across the supply chain, it can also be a shared opportunity. So we've seen companies within an industry sector coming together, influencing partnerships with other people in the supply chain. Things like sharing best practices, driving greater visibility into material consumptions or emissions, or even making sure that you're collecting data on the sources from ethically responsible or diverse providers. So all of those kind of opportunities across every industry. But just a couple examples. One, in the automotive industry, there's Catena X Automotive Alliance that's come together across that industry to improve automobile manufacturing and the supply chain process around it. And then also on the pharmaceutical side, we're seeing like all of the top pharmaceutical manufacturers coming together with SAP to collaborate on speeding the clinical trials process so we can get those important vaccinations to all parts of the world, not just for COVID, but for all diseases that we need treatment. So just a couple examples of how those B2B relationships can make a huge difference. And then of course, regulators have an important role, right? Speeding up that transformation through risk reward programs, such as carbon offsets, trading, certainly incentives for more sustainable practices in that way. But, and just to highlight some of the SAP partnership programs that I'm really proud around. Well, one is that, we're partnering with the World Business Council for Sustainable Development to enable decarbonization through Scope 3 emissions transparency, which we know is a hard area to get after, but driving transparency into that area. And then obviously we're a founding member with the UN SDG Ambition, through which we've created specific guidebooks to enable customers to bring sustainability into those business processes. Again, that just has to be how businesses are run.
Yeah, and of course we're very pleased to be partnering with SAP on SDG Ambition. It's really kind of catching fire actually among many of the companies that we work with to drive ambition around these sustainable development goals. So thank you for that partnership.
Of course.
How can technology serve as an enabler to ambitious action on the SDGs?
Yeah, I see technology as playing a really critical and central role, right, in accelerating sustainability action at the scale that's required. We need to be able to do this across industries, across the globe. And to think about what role can technology play? First, it's about enabling visibility and transparency into kind of network-wide data related to carbon emissions, material use, resource management. Fundamentally, at some level, sustainability is a data problem, and that's where technology can help. It also, with that, you get business insights, right, and intelligence out of that data that you can then turn around and embed into those core mission-critical business processes. Again, looking at revenue and profitability, but also sustainability as that process fueled by the data and insights. And then being able to use that data also to think about new business models that enable things like the circular economy, new product lines, new services that are feeding into sustainability, not compromising essentially. And then, another thing that SAP we're doing very specifically from a technology perspective, we actually have a whole portfolio of sustainability specific products to help do things like make sure the product design is considering where the origin and the materials are coming from and how sustainable they are, to tracking the whole life cycle of a product from creation to retirement of it, to make sure you can see the transparency through that. And we've made it easier to deploy these technologies by teaming up with the UN SDG Ambition Initiative, which has been great. And it certainly gives the customers that clear roadmap on how to incorporate the technology and the business processes, right, within their specific industries. And You'll hear from two of these businesses in the next session today, specifically how we've come together around the first round of the Sdg Ambition Accelerator to achieve the changes, and also why it's a substantial value add for when corporations are able to move together in that direction.
And you're a big business yourself. What transformations are SAP undertaking to pursue ambitious action on the Sustainable Development Goals?
You absolutely. We can't just be a technology enabler. We need to be an exemplar ourselves. So just setting context for a second. So first, we've embraced the UN SDGs from the start, as you know, and we're also using the SDG framework in our own role as both an exemplar and an enabler. And interestingly, all of the leaders, myself included, were actually rewarded on the financial performance, but also on the non-financial aspects like employee commitment and SAP's greenhouse gas emissions reduction. So literally paying our leaders on being able to do these kinds of things. And then we've created a wonderful initiative with customers and partners joining us to what we call Chasing Zero. So zero waste, zero emissions, and zero inequality. So some backdrop of broader work we're doing. But just a couple examples of very specifically looking at our holistic steering and reporting area. We've been kind of led in providing sustainability specific reporting and guidance along with standardized financial reporting and analytics based on the World Economic Forum's sustainability metrics. So again, bringing that visibility and transparency to those sustainability metrics. From a climate action perspective, we accelerated SAP's goal to become carbon neutral in our own operations by 2023. And this will be 2 years faster than anticipated and is based on our own success in changing our business processes to be more sustainable and bring that visibility. And then the last one I'd highlight is around the circular economy. We're working towards eliminating single-use plastics in our own operations. And as part of our membership in the Global Plastics Action Partnership with the WEF, we actually conducted a pilot in Ghana to help minimize plastic waste and improve the livelihoods of the waste pickers. So just some various initiatives that we're doing.
Well, quite a lot. So Julia White, the Chief Marketing and Solutions Officer from SAP, thank you so much for joining us and sharing your perspectives.
Thank you, Dan.